First off is Andrew Herrington. So for people that don't know Andrew, he was fabulous in helping coordinate community groups' representation at the East-West Link Assessment Committee. He presented just after I did at that assessment committee, and I was very impressed by such a succinct summary of all that's been going on. He's also a retired Labor advisor and has been blogging frequently on the East-West Link. So give Andrew a bit of a clap.
All right. Do we want this up higher? Is that okay? Okay, well, what I've been asked to do tonight is to just go through a bit of the context and talk about where the project has got to. I got involved about a year ago. I don't live in the inner city anymore, but I saw that this was a really huge issue and that it was something worth spending a bit of time on. So I took it on as a bit of a project and spent a lot of time going to the assessment committee. And I'd have to say that this has been one of the most successful community activities that Melbourne's seen in quite a long time. I think we've seen community groups from across the inner suburbs get together and working together. A lot of people who haven't met each other before, but we have monthly meetings of coordinating between all the different resident groups in Kensington, and everyone has really come to a common position. They've worked out what's wrong with this project, what it means for their community, and they've really worked on a whole lot of different levels. And I think that's been very successful. There are architects and designers who come up with ideas about how it should be built differently. There are economists who are helping tackle all the traffic arguments, and there are people who go out and help the tunnel picketers to actually demonstrate very forcefully the community opposition. And people in that process have come up with lots of great ideas about how to sell the story, and we've succeeded in the number one objective of any community action campaign, and that is it's on the main talking point around Melbourne. It's in the papers on a daily basis. It's become a central theme of the election campaign. The Premier can't stop talking about it, trying to defend various elements of it, and they've been working overtime since they signed the contract to try and resell it to Melburnians, because they realise that the opinion polls are running very strongly against them, that you're getting about a 70-30 split of people who support investment in public transport as against investing in the freeway. And a lot of people are saying, why is so much money being spent in this one area on one particular connection when there are so many major transport problems all over Melbourne, the outer suburbs, the inner suburbs, the capacity of our rail system, which needs the Melbourne Metro to be resolved. All of those problems are piling up. So I'll leave it to the other speakers to expand on some of those issues and talk about what's going to happen next. I thought I'd just take you through a little bit of the details so that people are clear about where the project has got to and what we're facing in the next little while. But basically, the government introduced legislation back in 2013 to have a streamlined process to push through the approvals in a record time of about 3 months. They limited the assessment committee to only 30 days of hearing, but that didn't stop people. There were 1,400 submissions made. There were nearly 200 people appeared before the assessment committee and made their arguments. There was only one group who actually appeared to support the freeway. There were less than a dozen written submissions that supported the building of the East-West Link. And that one group, of course, was the RACV, and they just had a very weak presentation. They just said, oh, look, obviously it's very good. Although it's quite interesting that now they say their highest priority is the North East Link between the Eastern Freeway and Greensborough. They've only listed the East-West Link as their number 2 priority. So they're all over the shop in terms of what they stand for. We were, I think, very successful at the assessment committee. It got a lot of attention to a whole range of issues. A lot of people were very cynical about you know, the assessment committee. Some of the people on it have been on previous committees that had found basically in favour of the government, and they were all professional planners. So a lot of people recognise that you could put a lot of effort in and then got not very much back. But as it happened, we made the arguments and they were listened to. The assessment committee report is actually a very detailed analysis of if you really want to build this road, this is how you do it. But it also raised a whole lot of issues that hadn't been properly thought through. It questioned the traffic modelling. It said that Part B, which is meant to run from Royal Park to the Port of Melbourne, needed to be redesigned in its entirety. And a lot of those things that they recommended were never taken up. And the Minister, when he made his decision on the planning approvals on the 30th of June, he basically rejected almost all of those things and only accepted the recommendation in relation to not connecting to Elliott Avenue outside the zoo. However, it's very interesting that he did that in a great rush, and a month later he had to make a series of changes to it, and again on the 30th September he made further changes. So the project area has been changed twice, a number of the conditions have been changed. He required the assessment committee recommended a whole lot of changes to the design, and to get around that, the Minister said there would be 5 new development plans to look at various things like the eastern portal at Hoddle Street, the western portal at Ross Straw Field, the question about Part B, the connection to Flemington Road. And he set up another advisory committee to advise him as to whether these things were done to his satisfaction. He also recognised that they had drawn a very narrow boundary around the project, and so that there were a large number of people whose houses abutted immediately onto the construction site, so that there would be people who would have construction activity outside their front door for up to 5 years. And that resulted in a requirement that there be a property impact report done, and that was going to try and look at what were the merits of the argument, who should be given access to the compulsory acquisition processes and who had a weaker case. Now, as it happens, the Minister's received those 5 development reports, and he's received the property impact report, and he's decided not to release them. So this is following a great trend that there's been all through this project of great secrecy and a great deal of spin. There are probably more PR people working for the LMA at the moment than there are engineers, and you see that they put forward their PR people to talk publicly, not the people who are actually responsible for designing and building this road. So we're now in a position where we don't have a business plan, a business case, that's a secret. We don't have the contract, that's a secret. We don't have the property impact report, so we don't know what the justification is for who's going to be compulsory acquired, who's been offered voluntary acquisition. We don't know what the tolls are going to be. We don't know what the traffic projections are going to be, and we don't know what the impacts are going to be on neighbouring suburbs like Moreland. All of these things are being treated as state secrets, and basically the government has made a dash for the line. Normally a project like this would take 2 to 3 years to go right through the process from planning, environmental approvals, planning approvals, tendering and starting construction. And if you look at the comparison to the similar project in Sydney, WestConnex, that's taking a much longer period of time to go through all these stages. The government basically decided when Premier Napthine was shown the door, when Premier Bailey was shown the door, Napthine came in and said, what have we got that was really going to impress people? And he decided, you know, the East-West link is going to be my big thing. And he stuck with it all the way through. He said, we have to build this thing regardless. And he's really made it just about the only thing that his government's done, and now it's becoming the centrepiece of the election campaign. And I think that gives us a time frame. We're now 2 weeks away from Cup Day and the beginning of the caretaker period. We're 6 weeks away from the actual election. It shouldn't really be like this, but it's going to turn out this way, that after all our campaigning, we've brought the process to where it is now, and we're in total we're both dug into our trenches on both sides, and this issue will be decided as a referendum at the election. If Labor get elected, the project won't go ahead. There are 2 court cases that are currently underway, and there's a possibility of other activities. They're an incredibly complicated web of decisions that all need to be unravelled, and unravel they will. The problem is going to be how much will all this cost. Lend-Lease said in court that they've so far spent about $60 million, and the 2 unsuccessful tenderers are entitled to about $12 million each. There's all the expenses that have been incurred so far in relation to the planning and design. All up, probably a bit over $100 million. And that's money that's gone to waste. That's money that's been allocated. But it's still only 1% of the cost of going ahead with the project. So it's not a good thing for Victorian taxpayers that so much money has been wasted on this project, but it is an inevitable consequence of unravelling something which has been pushed through in such a high-handed manner. If the Liberals get re-elected, there's certainly going to be a real challenge facing community groups. They'll say they've got a mandate, they'll say that the people of Victoria have accepted it. There'll still be the court challenge that the Mayor will talk about a little bit later. The consequence of that court challenge would be to knock out the planning decision and force them to start again. Hopefully that would mean that they'd have to do a supplementary impact statement, and we'd go through the cycle again. But obviously if the coalition's re-elected, they'll want to push ahead, and they've shown every intention to use whatever force is at their discretion, including the police force, in order to construct the road. So we will have our work cut out, but that's why over the next 6 weeks it's very important that the parties that are opposed to the East-West Link, Labor and the Greens, are supported, and that the parties that are hell-bent on building it, the Liberals and the Nationals, are not supported. And I think the people of Moreland have done a terrific job during the campaign. Unlike some of the other areas like Kensington, Flemington, Carlton, Fitzroy and Clifton Hill, Moreland's not as directly affected. It's certainly, there are a lot of spill-off effects due to things like the connection at Brunswick Road, but the people here have been motivated by a broader desire because of what this represents about the sort of city that Melbourne will be. And people have been motivated to get into campaigns like MCAT have run in terms of marching in Sydney Road, the work that's been done to push the zoo into a much better position. And there are still a lot of issues like that left to go. But hopefully people will stay united, and we will keep fighting this thing for the next 6 weeks. But probably the message is that because of this referendum status that it now has, this issue is not going to be determined in the inner city now. It's going to be determined in the marginal seats, particularly down the Frankston line, particularly the regional cities, and the outer suburbs, places like Yan Yean and so forth. It's those seats that are going to decide who's in government, be it minority or a majority government. If it's Labor, we will win this campaign. If the coalition are re-elected, unfortunately, we're going to have to go back to square one and really work out how to run the campaign. But that's why I'm probably my message to you tonight is to think about how you can get involved with groups like Public Transport Not Traffic, who are organising activities down in the Frankston seats and handing out public transport leaflets, really highlighting to those people that every $1 billion that goes into East-West Link is money that's not being spent on the public transport issues that are of importance in their area. So I think I'll just leave it at that, and if people want to ask questions of detail about exactly where we're up to in the process, we can do that during the question time.